Can you take pictures from me while I record?
I apologize about fingers. I'm cutting back on electricity.
It's a cost-saving move, right?
Exactly.
Well, welcome. I already let the crowd know that we had a little teaser panel last night.
Yes.
And so we should run down the clip notes real quick. This is one of your first times to the Pacific Northwest.
Sure is.
Okay, you were just recently in Miami, so I'm sure you're freezing right now.
I was, yes. I borrowed my friend's jacket. Fortunately, it's the right color.
Let's see, we talked about childhood iconic heroes,
Yeah.
and you went with
What did I say?
Christopher...
Oh, yes, of course. It's when the word hero is always confusing to me.
Yes.
Because villain is my obsession, as I think we may have picked up. And Christopher Lee is my favorite villain of all time. He's also really...
Very iconic, the fact that, then you made him be your disciple.
I did. I said an unfortunate phrase 300 times. And the one you'll remember is the one that George Lucas picked. And it was this one. Do it.
And then we talked about your experience with Star Wars before you were cast in Return of the Jedi.
That's true. I saw the first one, New Hope, we now know it's called. And I thought it was great because it reminded me of when I was a kid and used to go to the Saturday morning movies when you had cartoons, which used to be called cartoons as opposed to animated movies, and it was a serial, and you were always left on the edge of the cliff every Saturday morning, and that movie is a series of being left on the edge of the cliff, and it has a cliff in it as well. So that was my first experience, but I didn't know I was in it. I didn't know Peter Cushing was talking about me, and then later on I found out that he was. And so that was very odd and entirely pleasurable.
Now, how did you get the job for Return of the Jedi? Did it have anything to do with Dragon Slayer?
You're so clever. Dragon Slayer was my first ever movie. That was an experience and a half. I was almost incinerated. You met by the dragon. And the dragon was a great flamethrower. And the day I was due to be incinerated, the character, everybody in the studio was wearing these great sort of anti-fire, garments and everything, except me. And everybody had a mask on, strong mask, flame resistant, all of that, except me. And as the flame got closer and closer, it got hotter and hotter, unlike today, and scalded me. However, it helped the performance. Yeah, that was my first ever film, and the director happened to be someone who was a kind of pupil of George Lucas, but I don't think that had anything to do with me getting Star Wars. But it was my first experience of a big Hollywood movie that was made in London, like Return of the Jedi was.
Oh, cool.
Very cool. Now, I have a question. As a school teacher with a master's in education and sociology, I'm curious about how your master's in psychology has helped you with your career and your characters.
Probably not at all. I was itching to get out of college and to do some acting really all the time. But it's a degree in social science, which is a distinguished profession. It's always seemed to me a little contradictory, social science. But no, it's a very respected profession, and a lot of people I know have followed it. But I didn't really go into much psychological depths. I was longing for it to be about Freud and dreams and things like that, but I never really got to that stage, because after my third year there, I scraped a degree, I have to be honest with you. When the names were put on the board, I thought I was a misprint. First time in my life, really. But I wasn't, I got through, and so I could satisfy my family, my father in particular, by saying, yes, I have a degree to fall back on, and now I can maybe try and do what I really want to do. And I did.
Are there ever days where you, as a accomplished Shakespearean actor, ever scratch your head and go, how did I become the face of evil for sci-fi and fantasy for the last 4 decades?
Yes, sort of every hour, really. I've never got over it. Here I am talking to you guys. But, you know, about this character I played over, God knows, about 40-odd years. And I never imagined it would happen. I mean, Star Wars, for goodness sake. It was such an unreal prospect, particularly for a relatively young, well, 33-year-old, 5-year-old, maybe, British actor to contemplate. And it still is. But I always loved villains. I always loved the idea of playing villains when I was a kid. We used to play games, my gang, local gang, we played Robin Hood a lot. I said, well, I want to play the villain. And they went, what, the Sheriff of Nottingham? And I said, no, King John, because he's worse. So it'd always be in the back of my mind. But Shakespeare's one thing, and Star Wars is another, but George, who is never at all pretentious about his work, I know would admit to the fact that the whole arc of Star Wars, particularly the story of Vader, of Anakin, is Shakespearean, in as far as it's the downfall of a tragic hero. And that's, you know, quite many of Shakespeare's plays are about that.
Yeah.
So.
Woo!
Now, obviously, your role in Star Wars has dominated your film career, but you've worked with other directors too, Frank Oz, Tim Burton, Mike Newell. What goes into you picking your roles when you're outside of the having to use a lightsaber?
Yeah. Well, frankly, they usually pick you. It's usually that way around rather than you picking them. But yeah, I mean, wonderful working with Tim and indeed Johnny. That was a very happy experience, Johnny Depp, in that movie, with a lot of very funny, good English actors. And that was great. But of course, I'm working with Yoda, as he later became to be known in my career, Frank Oz, who directed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Michael Caine and Steve Martin. And I hadn't met Frank at that point, and they were looking, my agent said, for somebody who would play Michael Caine's sidekick. Would I go down, it happens a lot like this in the industry, would I go down to London and meet Frank, who was there in a hotel? He would like to improvise with me to see if I was suitable for the part. So we met and talked a little bit, not too much about Star Wars, and I improvised and I made him laugh and he offered me the part. So then we went out to the south of France and had a very good time, and it was very difficult not to laugh at Steve Martin every minute of that movie because he's such a funny man, and keeping a straight face on those takes was one of the greatest achievements of my acting.
Now, your character shows up quite a bit, even in the modern animation shows for Star Wars. Have you ever thought about returning to the role of Senator Palpatine, now that Disney Plus is doing a lot of shows in a lot of different time frames?
Well, if they got down on their bending knees and begged me to do it. I've moved. It's very good. Are you an audio actor? No, I think I'm probably now a little old. Although it is amazing what they can do with people's faces in the movies, and not just with makeup. But I think probably the story of Palpatine would be quite an interesting one to tell, going way back from when he was a kid. But if it happens, and so many things happen in the Star Wars universe, I suppose one day, in fact, it would be a good opportunity for another much younger actor. And if I'm going to heaven or hell, I would certainly put the movie on and watch it.
Hey, let Disney Plus know. Would you guys watch a Senator Palpatine series?
Well, tell Lucasfilm and then send a copy of the email to Disney Plus, and let's see what happens.
Well, fantastic. Well, guys, like I said before, it's not just me asking the questions here. If you have a question for the Sith Lord here, we're going to ask that you come and make a line right here down the middle. And David, are you going to... Oh, do you want to dismiss our accomplices here?
Do they want to stand down? So, yes, they do. They can't wait. They want to take the heavy gear off. What could I do without them?
Thanks for coming. It's good to see you. Thank you for
See
coming.
you, sir.
Yeah, so aside from the actors you mentioned earlier, what other actors influenced you or took you under your wing before you made it big? For instance, we talked about Christopher Lee, fantastic actor.
Yeah.
Other actors did you emulate?
Yeah, well, there are lots of actors around. You know, villainous actors over the years. You could list them, and I would probably say they influenced me because I watched all their movies. But lots of actors have influenced me in lots of ways, just sort of sheer admiration. There was a great British stage actor, primarily, who he did some movies called John Wood, who was absolutely exceptional. And yesterday I was asked the question about maybe who my favourite was, and that's unquestionably Anthony Hopkins. In my mind, certainly one of the greatest actors of all time. And he's extremely versatile. He immerses himself in the parts, and he appears to do it with such ease. I got the opportunity to work on a television film with him once, and that was a thrill. And of that, I guess it's a policy he's followed throughout his career. He said, unlike "shall we rehearse," "shall we not rehearse," which I quite like too. So in those scenes we had together, we were, as it were, in the moment and spontaneous. You can't always do that in big movies because of the complicated technical apparatus that surround you, but when you can just relax and be in the moment, to my mind, provided you know the lines, and Anthony always knew them backwards and inside out, it's the best way. So he's the guy.
Of the Star Wars films you appear in, which was your favorite one to work on and why?
It has to be Revenge of the Sith. I had a lot more to do, and I also had the time to do it in, because when I was doing Attack of the Clones and indeed The Phantom Menace, I was running a theatre in London, so my head was full of other things. But our 13-year tenure at the Almeida in London was up before we did Revenge of the Sith, so I was able to go to Australia and spend the whole of the 3 months there learning how to fight a little bit. and working on those great scenes. And so, quite apart from the fact that that's the moment the politician turns into the monster, which was a great moment to do. I like the film because of the texture of it, and as I think you all know by now, my favourite scene is the one in the Opera House with Hayden, because it's also extremely well written, and probably the longest dialogue scene in any of the films. And we did it on my side of it, that we do it inside. That seat's exactly like this, actually, now I come to remember. You're sitting in my seat, don't move. And I'm sitting in Hayden's seat. And there was nothing more complicated than that. It was 2 chairs, roughly like this, a blue background, things would be added, of course. 2 cameras on tracks in front of me, below me, to make me look as hideous as possible. It really worked. And a late Friday afternoon it was, when I thought, well, George won't do it this afternoon because it's Friday and everyone wants to get off, and so the concentration won't be at its finest, but he said, no, we're going to do it, and we'll be on you, and if you need to ask for a line, because we have no chance to rehearse or anything like that, that's fine, just don't stop. The great thing you usually do on complicated scenes is, whatever you do, don't stop. So these were the instructions, and I was happy to have a go. I felt slightly at a disadvantage because we'd been working on other scenes during the day, and my voice was a little rough because when you have wind machines in front of you in big movies, they're not just, you know, a few fans in front of you, those kind of fans. There are enormous wheeled things driven by people towards you. So I felt I had more than half of the studio's dust down my throat. So I said to George, I'm probably going to sound a little bit, you know, hoarse. Anyway, that's great. It sounds as if he's in transition. In other words, shut up and get on with it. I did. And amazingly enough, we did it 20 times or something, and I didn't need to ask for a line. Phones went off, all sorts of things happened around me. But I had the confidence of those two brilliant cameramen who would keep me right. And they were down there so they could go all the time. And that got me through it. So that's one other great memory of doing that scene. But it was mainly because it's the big scene when poor Anakin finally gives in to the dark side. Yeah. And it's all my fault.
Great, sure.
That's a good kilt, yes.
Thank you.
Is that a tribute to my Scottish ancestry?
Yes, sir, it is.
I see you've got a t-shirt which says, I am the Senate. I feel I have to correct that. I am the Senate.
So you're obviously most well known for playing Emperor Palpatine throughout all of your fans here. And you clearly enjoy playing the role very much. What would you say is your most favorite role, both or either in theater or in movies? What was your favorite role to perform as an actor?
Yeah, it's. I've been lucky enough to do a lot of modern plays, and that's always exciting because it's the first time for everybody. You never quite know what's going to happen. And I've done some Shakespeare, but I've still got one on my list that I hope one day I'll be able to do, and that's King Lear. So that would be, and he's a monster, no question about that. It's a very, very powerful play, and he is in fact 80 years old, and in about 2 years' time I'll be his age. I feel that would be a good time to play it if I'm still alive. And the great thing about King Lear is he goes through an enormous journey. He starts off as a tyrant, just like Palpatine, horrible, does terrible things to his family, and is very ungrateful to his youngest daughter in particular. And then he's cast out by them because he behaves so badly. And he sees for the first time what it's like for other people to live, not a privileged life. And a lot of them are very poor and, you know, they have a terrible time. And he sees that and he thinks, well, I should have done something about that. But he can't by this time because he's gone mad. That's a great central Shakespearean irony. And it's a challenging part. I have to use full lung power. There's been a fashion recently to do that play in studio spaces, and there have been wonderful productions. But I think it needs a big space, even bigger than this. And it also gave me an opportunity to use my big voice on a part that really demands it. So that's the only thing.
I was just wondering, a lot of actors, when they're playing a bad guy, kind of have to get into the mindset of the character and even the philosophy of the character, where they have to kind of start to believe the character's beliefs. Is that something you deal with? And also, does Palpatine have any redeeming qualities?
I think we know that he has one. He likes going to the theatre. That's the only one. And no, my method is no method, really. I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where the voice came from, really. And the voice came out when I saw my horrible face. Brilliantly brought to life by Nick Dutman all those years ago. And I thought, well, he has speak like some terrible, disgusting, sepulchral toad. That's where that sort of came from. So one clue can lead to another, and you sort of build the character. But no, fortunately, having played Palpatine so many times, I think I can say that I have not become psychologically depraved. I have a friend here who may disagree with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So going back and playing the rewatching movies like Revenge of the Sith or whatnot, and this with Disney's more recent acquisition of Star Wars, when you go back and watch those films, do you ever find it kind of ironic to feel as if, since James Earl Jones voiced both Mufasa and Darth Vader, did you ever think in your head like, go get him, Lord Mufasa? or like even in Master Yoda's Frank Oz playing Fozzie from the Muppets, since Master Yoda was originally a Muppet.
Well, the interesting thing is the whole movie world, maybe the whole world really, is amazingly surreal. You know, we all take what we do seriously, you know, we want to be professional and so on, get it right. At the same time, you think, this is mad. This is completely mad. And J.J. Abrams, with whom I had a great time, he's a wonderful spirit, terrific director. And he said, it's a very American expression, I know, but we don't really say it very much in Britain. And after a take, he would go, oh my God, it's insane! And I knew that he meant that's good. But at the same time, I thought, yes, it is. It's really insane. It's really bad. Yeah. But I'm glad it's going well. Thank you.
Okay, this is probably a really dumb question. You think Palpatine's finally dead, or does he have another cloning facility somewhere?
That granddaughter is unforgivable. I think that's all that needs to be said on that subject.
Love your work.
Thank you very much. But as we know, times shift, you know, they go back and forwards, and with the world of Star Wars, we know, as my character sort of proved it, anything can happen.
So with like a lot of the prequel memes, which are really popular, like with Ewan McGregor with like the hello there and high ground, he's probably like the top of the prequel memes. And then you, I would imagine, is like probably the second. What do you think about like just like simple words like either like do it or I am the Senate? Like it's not really like so iconic, and yet like everyone says it. And
I know, it's such a surprise that the lines that people pick on, because when you're doing a movie, you don't think about that at all. You know, you think about the scene and so on. And but some of them really reverberate more and more. I was asked my favourite yesterday, and I gave a list. But I suppose the one I love most, just thinking about it today, considering the situation the world's in and we're all in, is the most daring, almost, description of hypocrisy you'd think of, when this man that I played says, in quote, sincerity, I love democracy.
Hi there. Originally I was going to ask actually what your favorite line was, but because of that, I guess I'll ask instead, what was the strangest thing being an actor when you actually started doing these big production films that was like, wow, this is crazy?
Yeah, it's all crazy, as I say. It's all been strange, but you know, when I was first asked to be in it, I didn't know what it was. I knew George Lucas was involved, so I guess it's probably Star Wars. And then later on, I met George many years later, and he said, do you know anyone who wants to play an emperor? And I said, yeah. And then he told me a little bit, not all of it, not much of it, the story of, well, the prequels really, that's the first one. And I was the right age to be able to play the senator. And then what we've just been talking about, J.J. Abrams called me and said, would you like to be reincarnated? So, you know the phrase, third time lucky? Well, I feel I've been lucky 3 times. And, there was nothing, one thing didn't lead to another automatically in my brain. They just all came up, And it was great to be able to swing through the ages, really. And particularly go backwards to find out, what the man who became the monster was initially like. And as we said earlier on, one day somebody will go further back still and find out the story of, Darth Plagueis, etc. Thank you.
You mentioned earlier that you got a degree as kind of a backup plan. I'm curious, what did your family think about you being in Star Wars, and has that changed at all over the years, seeing you go on and go on?
No, not really. And the answer to that is I have no immediate family, and my mother died when I was very young. And my father also did live to see Return of the Jedi, so it's a sort of academic question. But I think they would have been pleased. My father always was worried about me being an actor, it's an uncertain profession, why don't you get a decent job, make some money, etc., etc. But I did notice that once, early on when I was in the theatre and repertory and I got a good review or something, he'd taken it up to his club, he had a bridge club, and shown it to his friends, And I pretended to hate him for that, but I didn't really. I thought, oh, well, I've cracked it at last. He seems to be pleased.
Pleasure to meet you, sir. I'm something of a Sith Lord myself.
Oh, good.
I sense a little bit of Jedi corruption in the room, and I'm looking for wisdom from you. So could you tell me the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise yourself?
Oh. Do you have the rest of your life? No. That's the answer, I'm afraid.
We probably have time for about 2 more questions.
Okay. You have to be quick in this business.
Oh, I heard 4. I got 4 questions.
Okay.
I was told 4. There you go.
Someone stuck in there. Yes. Okay. Hi, ma'am.
Hi. So I was thinking not a lot of the Star Wars live-action actors ended up doing any voice work for their characters. So I was curious how you ended up on the Star Wars Rebels and what your experience was doing your character in a different format.
Yes. I mean, they asked me to. I don't know if you heard that. The voice that I do as the Emperor, as the creature in the animated series. Initially, a lot of us said other people should have a chance, to do those voices. There's no reason it has to be us all the time, although we were very protective about our roles in the movies. And then I was approached, I think, for the last episode of a particular series and so on. And very much persuaded by the great Dave Filoni. And also, as you know, apart from his genius generally, he's very good at writing scripts. So I was very tempted back. Now I've come back for a bit anyway.
Now, when I was at Celebration last month, they showed a little clip of your character in Bad Batch Season 2.
Oh, yes. I didn't know they'd done that. Well, I guess that means I'm in it. You also, but sometimes, you have to be careful. You sign disagreements and everything to shut up. And it's perfectly reasonable because we don't want to give anything away. But when people say, are you in something? Genuinely, you often don't know, because you might have been in it initially, and it might end up on what used to be called the cutting room floor. So it's often the honest answer to the question, as opposed to an evasive one. And don't you dare ask me the question I know you want to ask me about the current series.
One more episode left, fingers crossed.
No sign of it so far, don't get your hopes up.
I was just wondering, all the Star Wars characters that you actually played with, what was your favorite actor to work with?
That work with Hayden Christensen, unquestionably. I don't want to, I don't want to play down. He was the closest we were in terms of our involvement in the scenes and close-ups and so on. But he was a great guy, and I really enjoyed working with him, and it's been great to see him again, coming back. that wonderful sword fight in the episode we saw, which was not borrowed from an original film, but once again, beautifully created with a little digital help. And so that's the answer to your question. And I know he's enjoyed coming back and now, as it were, taking the character's history and revisiting it in the knowledge that you all have of what's happened to the man.
Hello there.
Hi.
So my question was taken, so I had to scramble for a new one.
Okay.
If you could pick a hybrid crystal color for Salinas yourself besides red, what would it be?
Red. Yes. Black isn't really a color, is it? That would be cheating.
That's a dark saber.
And white. Yes, I'm going to say purple because Sam got that. I've been signing quite a lot in yellow lately on these things you've asked me to sign, and they match his yellow eyes. And I was pleased when he got his yellow eyes back in episode 9, because I wanted to borrow that phrase, from Frank Sinatra. His phrase used to be, "Oh, blue eyes is back," and I could say, "Oh, yellow eyes is back."
How comfortable were those contacts?
Initially, they were fairly tough because they were made of glass, amazingly enough, designed by a brilliant oculist optician called Richard Glass. And he's always designed them, except for when I was in Australia for a time and he couldn't come out. But in episode 9, he put me through it again, and of course they've transformed enormously, and they weren't at all uncomfortable to wear. But he was always on set, and he's very tough, Richard. And if he thought they were in too long or I was suffering, he would go, "Cut!" Much to the astonishment of directors. And he wasn't taking any nonsense when it came to my eyes, for which I'm very grateful.
All right, I think we have time for our final question.
So, as a fan of Star Wars since I was very young, I've always wondered about Palpatine and did you take any inspiration from previous books about the early life of Palpatine from Legends, or did it was Return of the Jedi and then forward you just kind of formed?
Yeah, the second part really applies. As I said earlier, it was all sort of a surprise, to sort of catch up with yourself in a certain way. But I'd always been fascinated by the devil, really. And this great and complicated poem called Paradise Lost, which I recorded on the radio a couple of different ways. The devil plays a very strong part in that. It's called Satan, of course. And the interesting thing about Satan is Milton, who wrote it, John Milton, has written a character which is not unsympathetic, really. God gets a worse deal in Paradise Lost than Satan does. And the reason Satan is sympathetic is he was flung out of heaven. So he's a disappointed man looking for revenge. So I always think that if I had to have a backstory for Palpatine, I suppose that would be it. But as I say, maybe in years to come, you'll find out what that real disappointment was. Or maybe he was horribly abused by somebody at a very early age. Or maybe none of those things. Maybe he was, as I've often said, he just came out of the womb as a solid block of evil.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Ian McDiarmid.
Thank you. Well, I'm still around Broadway tomorrow, so I'll never see you again.
Yes, you will be bringing an apprentice tomorrow, so you can get photographs, autographs. Thank you for coming to SummerCon, ladies and gentlemen. Have a fantastic night. We'll see you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.